we're now joined by international relations analyst Thembisa Fakude, and he joins us via our video link. Thembisa, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. I mean, just looking at that report and looking at what AGOA meant for South Africa last year, it was a really big talking point just ahead of that summit that we saw last year, and that was because of the position of South Africa when it comes to the Ukraine and Russia war. And, looking at it now, what is your take on this new stance when it comes to dropping on the out of cycle review for South Africa?
I think South Africa invited its own problems. Although they've had a very sound position in Ukraine, but they've flip-flopped in terms of communication, which gave rise to suspicion that South Africa was fully in the corner of Russia when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine. But I think over the past couple of months, they've managed to communicate properly. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Nandi Dupando, visited the United States, and there's been communications taking place. The delegations from Ukraine visited South Africa. So South Africa somehow did manage to communicate their position quite clearly. And I think that has, to an extent, influenced the new position, which initially sought to single out South Africa for that out-of-cycle review. Now, the out-of-cycle review is basically there generic for everyone, not necessarily single out any country.
And I was about to come to that exactly. What does this actually, this new bipartisan U.S. Senate bill mean for South Africa, especially in terms of trade, the trade that we've enjoyed between the two countries?
I think trade will continue and it's likely to grow. But the good news, of course, is that South Africa is no longer singled out. The provision remained, and South Africa, of course, is going to have close scrutiny because of its very aggressive, independent foreign position, which most of the time has tended to offend the United States, particularly on the Russia-Ukraine war and the war in Gaza by Israel. So South Africa has taken a very strong position. And South Africa, of course, most of the time tends to disregard the power of the United States and the relationship they enjoy with the United States. There is often a position that South Africa can do without the United States. And I think that continues to hurt the relationship that South Africa enjoys with the United States. But I think the advances both from the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation and President Cyril Ramaphosa has since began to appreciate those relationships. And I think their attitude has changed in terms of the United States. I think there is an element of growing respect, and we've seen, for example, what President Cyril Ramaphosa has been saying, particularly on matters involving our application in ICJ and Israel. There's that element of not wanting to offend other parties, but taking a position that's very, very independent.
And coming to the issues of the ICJ and the war in the Middle East, as well as the war with Russia and Ukraine, how dented is the relationship now between South Africa and the US based on this foreign policy or this foreign policy stance that South Africa has taken?
I think Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very easy for many people, including the United States, because South Africa was the first country to confront the brutality of Israel led by Benjamin Netanyahu in Gaza. But what we've seen happening, we've seen Joe Biden also taking a very strong stance. So you've got this bloc of nations now against Israel. So it makes it easy for South Africa, whereas in the past South Africa looked as if it was going to be isolated because of its stronger position on Israel. But with Israel violating, disregarding any form of advice from its ally, particularly the United States, things seem very easy for South Africa. In fact, what you see now happening, we are seeing many countries now joining in condemnation of Israeli offensive in Gaza, and we're seeing a lot of countries now taking the side of South Africa. So that has, to an extent, made South Africa and gave South Africa some sort of softer and cushioned landing, and it then becomes, or it has become very easy for the United States to side, in inverted commas, with South Africa in terms of its condemnation of an Israeli aggression in Gaza.
And looking at AGOA as well, Thembisa, and looking at this extension to 2041 when it comes to trade between the two countries, how will this benefit South Africa?
I think it's going to benefit South Africa hugely in terms of, we are addicted to United States goods and services. And as long as at least you and I, Mbali, are alive, we're still going to be consuming these goods and services. So it's good news for us because we're going to have relatively good priced goods and services coming from United States, which we can't do without, at least for now. So that's good news for South Africa in terms of trade. It's good news for consumers in South Africa because it means that they will continue enjoying pricing favorable, particularly for their favorite goods and services that come from the United States. So all around is good. And South Africa, of course, will continue exporting its own goods to the United States at the relatively low and acceptable tariffs and taxes. So overall, I think it's good news for South Africa and Southern Africa in general.
And coming to South Africa's struggling economy and, looking at AGOA and what it means as well, what does this mean for the state of the economy, particularly for one like ours, which needs a lot of growth?
Well, it means more opportunities, more employment opportunities, because you will have more, at least the business is going to continue. And one hopes, of course, that, instead of having had all the suspicion in the past was that the United States was going to exclude South Africa from AGOA. Now we know that it's all systems go. That gives some sort of confidence, particularly to foreign direct investors and investment that should be coming our way because of this relationship. In fact, this relationship is a vote of confidence. If you're going to have the United States saying and giving a nod of doing business with South Africa, amongst others, for the next 16 years, it is a nod to an extent in terms of voters' confidence to South Africa economy, to South Africa politics. And this just could open up other relationships, because if the United States is willing to do business with South Africa, it doesn't directly communicate opportunities our way from other countries, particularly Europeans, into our country.